Today's episode is brought to you by Zapata's Grill at 904 Pamplico Highway in South Florence. They've been proudly serving our community for over 20 years. And we are certainly happy to call them partners of the Florence Foodies Club. Remember, when you show them your Florence Foodies Club membership ID card, you will receive 10% off of your ticket. If you were wondering where to go for dinner tonight, then you just got your answer. Go to 904 Pamplico Highway and see the other Sammy and the crew at Zapata's Grill. So we have the Lee brothers today, and I'm very excited about this because you can't really talk Florence food at this point, I think, without having a conversation about you guys. And so we're going to get into that. But before we do, and we talked about this off camera just now, I think it would be wise and beneficial to kind of give some background for those that may not know. So who are the Lee brothers?
So I'm Ted. I'm the younger, taller one. This is my brother,
I'm Matt. I'm the older, younger looking one.
And we grew up in Charleston, which, as you know, is a great food culture. And we both ended up going to colleges in the Northeast. And it was then that we realized that basically our whole childhoods we'd taken for granted just how much we'd learned about food and thought about food. And that, it was just, there were all these things that we were so accustomed to, having grown up on in coastal region of the South, that our new friends in college had no idea. Like my roommate had never peeled a shrimp before.
He'd never peeled a shrimp. And so he's presented with a shrimp, but he didn't know what to do. And Ted was
Just
like,
eat the whole thing?
Why is this guy illiterate? I mean,
And
let alone
so,
shucking an oyster.
And so I think that's really like, that was the sort of
picking apart a
genesis.
crab.
That was the genesis of our first real sort of entrepreneurial venture in the world of food, which was a mail order catalog of Southern pantry staples. So that, the idea of being in college, I went to college in Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, and you couldn't get grits, you couldn't get
boiled
peanuts, you couldn't get anything. And so we started with our anchor product being boiled peanuts, and but then we had people calling us and saying, "Hey, I love your peanuts, but can you get me some stone ground grits? Can you get me some whole fig preserves?
Duke's mayonnaise.
I mean, things that
Coleman's barbecue sauce.
Yeah. So we sort of soon realized there was an array of foods that people wanted if they weren't in the South, and they would pay for us to ship them to them.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like the early 90s. We started that venture in 94. And we still have our same office in Charleston that we've had for that for that business.
Boiledpeanuts.com is the
that was the
URL.
Yeah.
That's easy.
And actually, we actually, on the 30th anniversary of that business, we actually stopped shipping boiled peanuts by mail order and this was in 2024, we stopped shipping boiled peanuts by mail order just because the cost of shipping it had become so crazy.
Perishables,
and it just seemed, so resources intensive, and, boiled peanuts are something that coming around 30 years later, we're thinking,
pulled to the side of the road. There they are.
Yeah.
Maybe they should just stay where they are. I mean, that's the magic of them, is they're always there by the side of the road, or you boil them up at home, but maybe they should just stay, here and not be shipped to LA or Alaska or wherever. But in those 30 years, we did a lot of other things. We ended up, most people, I think, know us for writing about food. We became food journalists in a sort of circuitous way, and a fortunate way, in the sense that one of our customers, the Boiled Peanuts catalog, was the editor of a travel magazine based out of New York called Travel and Leisure. And she asked us to write a story about
South Carolina.
But
not Charleston. She wanted us to check in with all the suppliers and the Muscadine Vineyard and Batesburg and Coleman's Barbecue Sauce Factory and Clemson Blue Cheese Caves and all that kind of stuff. And so we plotted an itinerary. It actually began right here in the PD. We did Dillon, But we went to the PD State Farmers Market and bought a muscadine vine there that we carried with us the rest of the journey. And so we wrote that up, had an amazing time. We rented at their expense a Mustang convertible just to make it fun, and wrote it up. And it was like a 12-page piece in the magazine that went, nationwide. And that really kind of torqued up the boiled peanuts business, but it also got us into the world of journalism, writing about food and reporting on it, and taking pictures of it, and developing recipes that kind of distill the essence of the journey, and just kindled that conversation about food, which, as you well know, is an interesting one to keep up.
So when was that?
That was 1999.
Okay.
So that piece came out January of that year, I think, or maybe the year 2000. But right, there, the internet bubble is kind of there, but it's not a popular thing quite yet.
I mean, I guess it'd be hard for like young people who are getting into it and content creation now to imagine like there really were only a few magazines. Like if you wanted to write about food or food and travel, especially, like, there wasn't a lot there. And so it was a very visible story because it was sort of counterintuitively, it was like younger writers. We were in our late 20s then. And it was like a road food story where, most travel stories of that length were always about like going to Thailand or,
Taking a
Saudi
cruise
Arabia.
down a river in Europe, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was
stuff.
like a road food story, and there wasn't a lot of people covering that sort
There's
of
no one covering
vibe.
rural South Carolina in a celebratory, happy place.
Yeah.
These are
like this is where you find the best
the
food,
coolest
right?
stuff you can
The
find
greatest
in
stuff
South
you can
Carolina.
find. So other magazines started calling us. Food and Wine magazine called us and said, "Hey, we saw your story about South Carolina. Can you do a similar style story about another region of the South?" Which was awesome because like then we sort of had a couple of years where we would just choose where we wanted to go, like Northern Florida, like the Panhandle. So many rich food cultural moments there. Eastern Kentucky. It was, it really got us out of like our Charleston bubble and traveling all around the South. And that's where, sort of in the next step in the thing, there was a library in the New York Public Library in New York City. Like they've been reading our stories for the magazines and such, and they convened a panel of Southern journalists,
Food experts, cookbook
Southern
authors.
food experts, cookbook authors, and we were on that panel. And there was an editor in the audience who publishes cookbooks, and she said, "It seems like you guys would have a cookbook in you." And we were like, "Okay." And so that's how we ended up, writing cookbooks and really distilling the experiences of growing up in Charleston, but also traveling outside the South and discovering that, the Mountain South is a completely different region and with completely different traditions, all of which are so amazing, and just, bringing this sense of discovery to like, to every region you travel through.
We definitely love exploring, and our enthusiasm, like when we went on one of those 9-day trips to kind of report on Eastern Tennessee or wherever, we would approach it kind of like a mission, like a, ninja mission. And so we'd line up the appropriate soundtrack and the appropriate vehicle. And we'd have all sorts of, note-taking devices. And we took tons of photos, of course, some on a film camera.
Yeah.
And some of those ended up in our first cookbook. I'm glad I took the film camera, as expensive as that was. But that just raw enthusiasm for exploring a culture, a food culture, definitely is, part of what we've done all along the way.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And, it really, what we found was that the sort of counterintuitively, people would say like, well, how do you know what restaurants? And a lot of times we would be going into people's homes as well, just to get a sense of like, yeah, there's these, you can go to restaurants and farm stands and stuff like that, but like, how do people home cook? Because
Yeah.
Charleston's a home cooking, fundamentally, it's always been a home cooking place. Now it's known for its restaurants, but we grew up there in the 80s. There are like 3 restaurants there of the kind that, people do a special occasion at. Um, but what we would do before we do anything is talk to folklorists um, in the
The
region because
state employed folklorists in any state are a great resource, and they know what's what in terms of food.
um,
And they come together at an annual conference. I'm sure it rotates around the nation. And evidently, the after hours partying at that is crazy. Like they bring out the moonshine and everything. And
but they're on the ground level. They know like house by house in their area, what person is making biscuit dough bowls, like
out of
what
Tupelo
person
stumps.
is making like a certain dried apple pie that nobody's made for 80 years, but is a local recipe. And so that like nerding out on home cooks and meeting the people who are doing those traditions, because they were usually super old. And that was, fundamentally every good food story is a story about people. So
Yeah.
that was always what try to focus on the people and the communities that create amazing.
Right.
Along the way, we've collected so many cookbooks from every region, but especially from the South Carolina Low Country. And in our most recent cookbook, which was focused on Charleston, we have a bibliography in the back. But you can pretty much map out like what food traditions in your community, um, are there through the community cookbooks, whether it's a church or a school cookbook. Any place where people come together. Sure, there will be some clippings from Rachel Ray's whatever in there, but for the most part, there's going to be some real diamonds in the rough contained in those community spiral bound cookbooks. And when you map those recipes against what's going on in the restaurants, you see they're very different.
Complete random thought. So we're going to move back a few minutes in your conversation, but it came to my
Go for
attention
it.
probably about 6 or 7 months ago that people like to eat the tails on the shrimp.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that was new to me. And so I was somewhere and I was trying to think if I could remember where it was, but I couldn't. But it wasn't that long ago. And I had a plate of shrimp and I ate the tails and it actually works.
And I mean, especially if it's like fried
Fried,
shrimp,
yeah.
it's, and then sometimes in Charleston we get them, they're so young where the tail is almost, it's just like it's,
Even if they're just sautéed, you just
Yeah.
eat the whole thing. Breakfast shrimp.
So stupid thought, but I just thought about it while you were saying
yeah,
that. So I wanted
no.
to share it. But
Not stupid at
no,
all.
it's,
And
that's
I love the
really,
tail of the shrimp. My wife always leaves them on the plate, and I grab them up. They're like popcorn, but there's something about the chitin, the shell material is kind of concentrated there, and you crunch it up, and you add some air to it, and it's got such a great flavor.
yeah.
Toasty.
So
like-
I learned something
yeah,
new.
yeah.
But the other thing I was thinking too is that's actually brilliant. The going into people's homes, and I've seen some of that globally. There's some folks that are doing that kind of thing, and I always find that interesting. But one thing that I've thought about, we talk a lot about the migration, and so you've got regional cuisine coming into different areas, and now we're seeing a lot of that here, and that's a wonderful thing. We're very
Yeah.
excited about it, but I'm sitting here and I had a thought, as time goes along, the potential downside is, do you begin to lose some of
Right.
that element?
Right.
Some of those
Right.
regional, local
Right.
recipes that grandma was making.
I think
Yes,
that is
of
where
course.
the journalists and the content creators, the people who are doing that work,
You're preserving history.
You're helping
Yeah,
to
need to
preserve
be
it. You create that
preserving it.
roadmap. So
And it is frustrating to see a TikTok, someone saying, "I just discovered this," as and you're just like, "Oh my God, you're talking about something that was like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone knew about this." So, restoring that history is part of what interested us too. Um, uh, and the notion that, there's really not not much new out there to be done, but there's a lot of work to be done in finding old recipes and sort of understanding sort of why they are the way they are. I mean, there are a lot of ones that we would, especially in Charleston, in our Charleston book, like going back, and you could sense they were sort of you could sense the what am I trying to say? You could sense that they
Even I
were
don't know what you're
they
trying to
were
say.
underdoing whatever was the most expensive ingredient because it
Yeah.
was so
They're holding
scarce.
back.
They're holding back. Thank you. They're like
Depression
holding
era
back.
thinking. Yeah.
Depression era thinking, like the spices would be like really restrained, and things that would have been costly. And so we can adapt those, but also understanding like the old recipes, going back to cookbooks from the 1800s, and
Yeah.
In our current work, producing live events and festivals, it's kind of cool because we can use that festival as a spotlight to shine on local traditions and to bring up those kinds of conversations around food, whether it's the focus of a particular event about traditional pork dishes, or it's a panel discussion, or there's just a lot of opportunities, or just like putting a couple chefs together who kind of are channeling the same vibe. Um, you can kind of, shine that spotlight and kindle those conversations and kind of keep the idea alive of whatever that local tradition is.
One thing that I wanted to touch on, and we are kind of backing up again, but would you be willing to just kind of unpack a little bit of the mail delivery story, that business? Because I know that the first time I went to New York, I was 13. It was 2001, and it was February of that year. And mind you, I'm a kid. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and all I know is this at that time, really. And we went to some place in Manhattan. I don't even know what it was, but I wanted to get sweet tea because that's what I order whenever I go out to. And my uncle's like, "Bro, you're not getting that. That's not." I'm like, "What?" I mean, they don't have it. Like, what are you talking? What do they drink? How do they not have it? Um, so that was eye opening. So I could definitely see that if I lived there, I would definitely have a use for a business like that. How'd that unfold?
It was just what you're describing. New York is a place where you presume that everything is available. It's a world city, right? And so no matter how esoteric the tapioca flour from, Western Africa or whatever, like there's a place to find it, and you can even get sweet tea, or if you can't get it, you can make it yourself, right?
Yeah,
But it just pissed us off that we could not get boiled peanuts
at all.
at all.
Yeah, I could see
And
that.
and we were like, come on, And so we made it our mission, again, kind of like SWAT team food mission to figure that out. And we did figure it out. And we found the raw peanuts. I mean, we didn't find boiled peanuts, but we found the raw peanuts at this incredible wholesale market in the Bronx. And it looks like a prison. It's surrounded by a high, razor wire fence with
Wow.
a toll booth. And you paid at the time $1 per car to get in, and showed them your driver's license. And but once you were in, it was like, a 80-pound bag. It was like the PD State Farmers Market times 1,000. Like once you were in, you could, for $8, you could buy an 80-pound bag of coconuts, like just off the plane from, Belize, or a tray of the most beautiful raspberries you've ever seen flown in from Chile or whatever for cheap. And there we got a 50-pound bag of North Carolina, raw peanuts for maybe $13. And maybe we got two of them.
green peanuts, like you could smell the Florida field they were from, and here we were in the Bronx.
One of the cool things about New York, I have to mention, is that in a wholesale market, a strictly wholesale market, in any other state, like you have to show a business license to prove that you're qualified. In New York, it's like if you're willing to put up with the conditions, and pay the $1, just come on in. But watch out, you might get run over by a forklift,
I mean,
no
it's-
doubt, and they will not be nice to you.
Right. And if
But
you don't
could-
have your cash, and if you're coming in with any retail sort of thinking like, oh well,
they're not going to explain the merchandise to you. There's going to be no
you're not going to
customer
be able
service.
to taste it. It's just like
You need to get out of
cash
the
and
way.
carry.
Hurry up
'cause-
and buy.
Yeah.
And did I mention there's like 2 inches of pulverized cardboard and unidentified liquids and pulverized fruits and vegetables on the ground. So you're like wading through this slop.
Yeah, you need to
It's
wear
really-
boots. I mean, it's
really
really
Wow.
it's really a raw
Hardcore.
experience.
That, in fact, was the first story we ever wrote for the New York Times newspaper, was about that journey to the Hunts
to the
Point
Hunts
Terminal
Point,
Market,
to
and
find
trying to
peanuts.
encourage people and warn them that, you can go there if you
You can shop from
need
there
that bag of
as a
coconuts.
civilian, but
So then, and so, the initial idea was making boiled peanuts available in New York. We thought it would take off as like a bar snack, and we were kind of a little confused about what direction we were going with it. And then June 1st, 1994, the New York Times wrote about it um, in a little just, bits and bytes, and boom, the telephone rang off the hook for the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And the customers brought us into the mail order business. They said, I'm out here in Seattle, Washington. You got to get me those boiled peanuts.
Yeah, because
and added a jar of Duke's mayonnaise, okay? And so they really let us, like, we are not normal entrepreneurial inclined people. Our parents are academics, and we're clearly nerds, and not naturally going to gravitate toward that kind of clever hard work, but the
Hustle.
customers made us do it. We just had to, and we're polite. You know, we weren't going to turn them down.
The original idea was providing, for bar snacks for bars, but there was also a wave of southern restaurants at the time that had sort of just caught on, and what we didn't realize is that they weren't necessarily southern restaurants. Most of them were like southern theme restaurants, and so they'd have a cute name like Chat and Chew or something, and you'd go in and
Coyote Ugly.
Yeah, so we would go in and with like boiled peanuts, and they're like, "What is that wet thing? Do not bring that anywhere near here," And we were like, "This is boiled peanuts.
Yeah.
You're a southern restaurant." And they'd be like, "No. Our owner's from Long Island. He just went to he went to Daytona one weekend and came back with this idea."
There was only one restaurateur who let us in the front door in that brief period when we thought we would sell them wholesale, and he was Alexander Smalls from South Carolina.
Yeah, and he actually has a connection to Florence.
Yeah,
It's
his
so
cousin Marva is here.
I was going to ask about the response up there to the peanuts because that's another thing I didn't realize. You don't know until you know, and I didn't realize
Right.
how polarizing boiled peanuts are, but they are. And I had a couple come in from Europe. This was just like 3 weeks ago. As a matter of fact, it was right after the 4th of July because we went to the Florence Flamingos All-Star game.
Yeah.
And I took them, and the young ladies from Austria, she'd never seen baseball ever, like literally not on television or anything.
Right.
And just maybe some clips and some movies, and that's
So that
it.
was new.
And yeah, so it was an experience for them. And then the gentleman's from England, and he's familiar with baseball, but not boiled peanuts. So I got some, and they hated them. They were not fans. Neither one. They were polite, but they were like, we don't like these.
We were actually surprised at how many people, when you explain what they are sort of okay with it. And certainly at the time that we were doing it, that we were, in the 90s, boiled soybeans had just become sort of something that became popular in sushi restaurants, Japanese restaurants. And so we could
edamame.
Mhm.
Yeah, edamame. We
them
could
in
sort of
any grocery
explain
store
it.
now.
It's like, we'll think of it's like you pull it out of the ground, and instead of roasting it, you boil it. That's it. It's a legume.
Yeah.
And so
Little
if you
salt,
explain it, people are like, "Oh yeah." So it's kind of, that's when they're like, "Oh, it tastes like a garbanzo bean."
They're thinking that you take roasted peanuts and then put them back
Put 'em
in
back
some
in
water
yeah,
and
with
like muck them up a little bit more. And it's like, no.
And it's just that like
turn it back to the
that distance from the expectation of the roasted peanut and what they what
Yeah.
a green peanut boiled tastes like.
I
It's
can
just
see that.
But we did soon realize, because we'd have people coming up, calling up and saying, "What are these things? Boiled peanuts? I think I want to try them." And we'd be like, "Nah,
No,
if
we're
you
not
don't know what they
sending them
are.
to
We're
you.
not
You
sending them
probably
to you."
That's smart. Trial and error.
Oh yeah, no, we learned the hard way.
Okay. Well, it's very interesting. It's cool. You could stumble into some success whenever,
Yeah.
you don't even know what you're getting into, but it works out.
Well, and it's definitely the case that in the long trajectory of our careers, we've been led into whatever the next step is, not by self-direction, but by the customers or the audience. And so,
So I was going to ask whose idea was the first cookbook, but it sounds like it was neither. It was kind of requested.
Yeah.
We were actually, at the time, we were thinking of writing a book of essays about, ingredient based, like writing about like stone ground grits and
Okra, yeah,
like an
deep dives
ingredient by ingredient deep dive
on Southern food.
on Southern food. And then one of our we passed some of those essays on to a friend, and they're like, what you really should do is a cookbook. And in the meantime, that woman had asked us, like, where do you have enough recipes to fill a book? And
The answer was no. But we did get a proposal out, and she ended up winning it in the initial phase. And then a year went by. We turned in 100 recipes that we had mostly developed, and we thought we were done. And then she called us in, and she's like, "Guys, I feel like you're holding back. Like you're not giving us the stuff we expect of Southern food. Like I want
fried chicken,
barbecue and mac and cheese and stuff." And we were like, okay. And 140 more recipes later,
wow.
And probably 3 more years. It took us about 4 years to come up with that first book. And it weighs 5 pounds. I don't know whether you've seen it. It's still for sale. It's the Barnes and Noble, I'm pretty sure, but it's like 2 inches thick, and it ended up winning 2 James Beard Awards, Best American and Cookbook of the Year. And so that was a good way to go to make it bigger and not as skinny, Well, we're skinny.
Our
the book
editor
can be fat.
she had a lot of experience in cookbook publishing. She, 30 years or 40 years by that time. And but she'd never done a Southern book. But she wanted it to be like all her other books, like 600 pages, really deep dive, not too many pictures, and
serious,
and her instincts were right, because I do think if we published that first sort of,
no one knew at all who we are, and still don't. But especially so, you want to put some meat on those bones and just show people like what your curiosities are and how deeply into the culture you want to get.
Well, let me ask you this. So you're James Beard Award winners for a Southern cookbook. So I'm interested to hear how you would answer this question. In a few words, how would you define Southern cuisine? It's a difficult question, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's the food cultures of the American South, and so that's broad, right? Because the American South could include, definitely includes Texas.
Yeah,
we could say Southeast if you wanted to narrow it down. And I said food cultures because even within the PD, there's different corners of it that have different feel to it or flavors, or might have a specific tradition that feels different.
And I asked that to say that's a tough ask of you on the editor's behalf, to say, well, I want it to be very Southern. Well, what is that exactly?
No, and so
what do you mean when you ask that?
Well, that's where that sort of traveling around the South as journalists helped us out, because we could say like, we could talk about things we encountered in Eastern Kentucky or Louisville or Lexington or
Cincinnati,
and reference, if we couldn't be the people who were experts in that region, we would have talked to them, and so we could sort of, distill what we learned from them. I mean, again, it all goes back to people, right? So we'd met so many people throughout the South that could really inform that sort of pan-Southern book that we wrote as our first book.
But yeah, not like this is my food. A lot of cookbooks come from that perspective. Like this is my food. I'm the expert on my food, and here I'm sharing it with you, the reader. But instead, an approach that feels more like a report from the field and journalism,
I like that. Instead of trying to put something in a box, just be objective. This is what's happening here.
But from growing up here, like one of the things that we didn't even know about really until we started traveling. I think it was in that first story for Travel and Leisure was we encountered a shrimp burger in, I can't remember,
St. Helena Island.
St. Helena Island.
Down like Beaufort County.
Like, shrimp burger? What's that? And it's like,
we don't have that in Charleston.
We don't have that in Charleston, or we certainly didn't back then.
We didn't back then.
And it's one of those things you only find in like literal shrimping towns like McClellanville or St. Helena, it's just
Port Royal. Yeah.
it's just like they have so much shrimp. They're just
They have too much shrimp.
desperate,
So
desperate to
Do
make it
anything you can with
interesting.
it.
Do
It's
anything
like
Make
you
a
can
burger
with
out
it.
of it.
they
Make a
can't
burger
fry
out of
it one more time.
And so that kind of thing, like where it's like micro regional, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's different from Charleston to McClellanville, and that's 30 miles.
I remember interviewing Charlotte Jenkins, matriarch of Gullah Geechee Cooking, and who's blessedly, very much still with us. Fantastic person and chef in the I think 9 Mile region of Mount Pleasant, like getting up toward Awendaw, and her husband grew up on Wadmalaw Island, which is maybe 25 miles south, not far, but they were getting into a kind of like comparative argument about like what food traditions he had growing up that she didn't, and vice versa. And even within, Gullah Geechee culinary foodways of, South Carolina, you can imagine back to a time before the bridges were built to Mount Pleasant. Like if you grew up in a neighborhood, that is your food community
Yeah.
as far as you can roam, easily. Um, uh, we're really interested in the PD and the whole corridor that connects to the train line. Having a train stop in downtown Florence is really kind of cool. And I think a lot of people take it for granted. But
I think there's a lot about Florence that gets taken for granted.
Yes,
absolutely.
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 Well, let's do this. Let's
Yeah.
chat a little bit about Florence. So, start at the beginning. What is how much of the story can you unpack on that note of y'all's introduction to Florence County?
So we've always been drawn to it. That very first story we did in 1999, we started the journey here. And so it was kind of karma that, flash forward 30 years practically. And Mr. Tim Norwood phones the Boiled Peanuts catalog hotline. And, if you know that business back in the day, you know that we never answered the phone.
You always had to
leave
leave a message.
It was very.
So, when was that?
That was
2020?
first summer of. It was when they were trying to reboot the Florence Wine and Food Festival after 2 years off from COVID. Because it's an April festival, they had to take off that first year, 2020, and then 2021 as well. So it must have been the summer of 2021.
Okay.
He left a voicemail, and it's like, I don't want any boiled peanuts, but I just would love to talk to the Lee brothers about coming and headlining our Florence Wine and Food Festival. And it's like, what is this all about? Okay. Call him back, and got to talking and realized, oh, no, sir. We're not going to headline your festival. We're going to help you rebuild it. And fortunately, he had hired Tamara Curvin, who's, you may know, you've had her on the show.
she's been a couple weeks ago.
She's
for
just
sure.
like crackerjack producer of anything. She can, if you want something produced, like she can marshal the resources and align all of the human resources to get it done. And she is
Go get her.
yeah, perfect festival director, and she's a farmer. She knows food too.
From the ground up.
So all the pieces were in place, and they had gotten such a good start on the festival by starting small, not getting out too big, too fast. And they had 3 great events over 3 days: Thursday, Friday, Saturday. About 600 tickets to start, and so we just engaged, and we started tinkering a little bit here and there, not making huge changes, but just kind of nurturing the whole system along, and we just fell in love again with the PD and with the people here, and have been so gratified just to see the food community come along and expand and diversify, and all those traditions, for the most part, I see being preserved. It feels like it's in a really good place. And, there's a few things we want to like really push going forward in the festival. More pecans, shad, that shad season that's very short in the spring up the rivers is something that we could put to use, feels very specific to this place. And yet a lot of people growing up, even people from here, just aren't even aware that these fish are coming up the river from the Atlantic Ocean. and they're delicious. But it's just been a great arena to work in and to just have those food conversations.
And we'd been, you know, we what Tim probably didn't know is that we'd been consulting to other food festivals. There's a food stage that we run for the Department of Agriculture at SeaWe, which is a Southeastern Wildlife Expo, which happens in Charleston every February, and also the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival. We were consultants to them on, and what we would do for Atlanta, what we would basically be doing in what we do in our journalism lives, like finding a story to tell, but through a chef on a stage doing a demonstration, or something more,
Or a seated dinner,
or a seated dinner,
bringing
like
multiple chefs together to tell their stories along a theme.
and so it was really fun and it made sense, and we knew we wanted to add some new events here, and that's been great. We added
A grand tasting, a culinary village where for a single pretty low ticket price here in Florence, 50, $75, maybe 100 if you want the VIP access. You can spend 3-4 hours sampling from all you can eat, all you can drink from some amazing local food purveyors, whether chefs or manufacturers, mostly chefs, restaurant chefs, and then paired with incredible, really high quality um, wines, beers, cocktails, sips. Um, it's just a great way to kind of galvanize the food community and to see them in a different light. It might be a chef that might be your regular restaurant on a Friday night, but here they are stepping out of that restaurant and really kind of showing off. And we challenge the chefs when they agree to do it. We're like, this is your opportunity to show your potential and what you really can do. You could bring the same greatest hit from your restaurant,
Right.
and that would be welcome. And then you'll discover new fans, but you might also want to show your regulars just what you can do and flex a different muscle,
Mm-hmm.
and we from the start we always said, the mission statement of the festival is fundamentally to celebrate. I can read the mission statement of the festival right here.
It'd take you like 15 minutes to find it, though.
But it's to celebrate the food and beverage community of the PD of Florence, while there's also a charity that's the beneficiary of. It's the largest fundraiser for Help for Kids Florence, which provides weekend meals for food insecure families in this area. So there's always been a mission, but we really want to shine the spotlight on the PD and Florence, Florence restaurants, but we do bring in some chefs from out of town. We had a couple of the South Carolina chef ambassadors, one from Greer. This past year, we had one from Conway. And so we try to mix it up. So if all the Florence restaurants, they're all going to be there's going to be a lot of them there, but there's also going to be some that you don't know. We
There's-
brought a baker in from Savannah, from the Bluffton area.
Yeah, there's always a little salt and pepper on the main entree, which is the out of town talent, just to kind of shake things up. And there's a lot of relationships among chefs where they know each other, and so they collaborate on a meal. The hometown chef and a guest chef.
And there's also, we bring in this guy Ray Isle has come for the last 5 years.
I think this will be fun.
He's the wine editor at Food and Wine magazine, and he's a really great educator. And so, he did a small sort of intimate session for 40 people last year that was tasting people through the effect of oak on beverages, whether it was white wine, red wine, bourbon. And it was really revelatory, and it kind of blew people's minds. So there's some learning sessions. The other thing we added last year was a free event, because we really did. I mean, most of the ticket prices of the events at this festival are low if you compare them with like the Charleston Food and Wine or Euphoria in Greenville. But we wanted an event that was free and open to the public, that showed people what the festival is about. And we're going to do it again because it was so popular. It's called the Florence Foodways Panel. And it's all about. Last year there were like 3 restaurateurs and
And we had our boy
3.
Kyle Hardy was on there last year,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
exactly. Kyle Hardy was on it, and
Was Rodney Scott on there too?
Rodney Scott was on
Vivian
it.
Howard.
Vivian Howard.
It was like,
But there was, and the gentleman who sort of curates the talent is Will Green, who's great. He's an amazing thinker around food and also a restaurateur himself. But hearing Kyle Hardy's story about how, when we were talking about the boiled peanuts, how that emerged and the audience like came to us. That's, his story about how he started with like being a fish dealer through Facebook. And then like people loved it so much, it was like he was slammed. And then the idea for the restaurant developed out of that. So we have an event now that's going to be for free, open to the public, that highlights PD food people.
and there's
that's
a bite and a sip with pretty much
much
everything
everything.
in the festival, no doubt. And that's no exception. Although it is ticketed, it's free.
you have to reserve because we have limited seats
Sure.
for it.
So can we talk about timeline? Do we have
Yeah.
dates for next year?
I think we do. And
We're going to
we talk
announce
about
them
'em?
next week.
Okay.
we're going to embargo it just for the announcement. But
Just
So
for the
it's coming.
announcement.
We'll
Yeah.
have- yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And everybody
There's
can
a
keep up at Florence
Yeah.
wineandfood.com.
FlorenceWineandFood.com.
yeah.
Yeah. Florence
And
Wine
on
Food-
Instagram. Yeah.
On Instagram,
And
follow us on
Facebook.
Instagram, Facebook. Go to the website. I think you can register through the website to be updated on everything. And there are a few events that sell out, so it's important to like get
Yeah.
there fast.
So y'all are well traveled and deeply immersed in food and beverage and hospitality culture. So I would be very interested to hear this statement also. And you're familiar with our area. You spend a lot of time here in
Mhm.
Florence and working in the area, that kind of thing. But definitely, it sounds like it'd be fair to say the last 4 years has been a lot more focused on Florence for you guys, just in that time period. Because from my perspective, even in that time period, we've seen a lot of growth and development. But what stands out to you about Florence in the last 5 years in particular you've been working here?
I mean, just the success, and I know it's been many decades in the making, the success of downtown Florence becoming a hub again and a viable, street level, walkable, congenial downtown is really a miracle. I mean, you remember the pattern that emptied out, and this is not unique to Florence. You see it all over the nation. When the air-conditioned automobile came about, these southern cities got, emptied out to a degree for suburban life. And to be able to repopulate that, and you see buildings going up on lots that have been vacant for 30 years. And to think that there's going to be apartments there and small businesses there and people walking the streets again and tending to their gardens and stuff. It's really remarkable and cool. And I know that Florence has won an award for that redevelopment, but I think they've done it carefully and with care and slowly enough that it hasn't felt like something laid on top. It's kind of just emerged from the ground almost.
And I think we've seen the just proliferation of new food businesses and the expansion of existing ones. The first year we were here, Buddy's Burgers didn't exist. And now, they're developing several other businesses beyond that. The Martha's Ice Cream Shop. Palmetto Bakery didn't exist the first year we were involved. And, both of those folks are involved in the festival. But that core...
The farmer's market downtown, the city farmer's market is really a world-class institution. If you look at it, like the quality of its design and its proximity to everything, and the kitchen incubator facility is like amazing. Like you don't see that every place else. It's never an easy road, but slow growth is really healthy.
Yeah. Well, you just named 3 excellent places.
Yeah.
Well, 4 if you count Martha's and all the development that they're doing. And this is really what it became for us. It ties into everything that we've talked about in this conversation, but it's just, a lot of people in Florence a lot of times tend to have a, I mean, I heard this my whole life growing up, like this kind of a negative perspective on our area. And I understand it. I get where it comes from. Like I said, I've heard it my whole life. But at some point, the light bulb clicked and we realized, for one, this is just personal. I'm going to jump on my soapbox for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
bear
go
with me.
for
Go
it.
for it.
But
I want-
just from, my background coming out of school and the path and direction that I chose and everything, the restaurant industry actually gave me an opportunity to start to become an adult.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
that lasted for 10 years. And so that was my livelihood for a long time. And a lot of times you learn things that you don't even understand until you're looking in retrospect, like, wow, that was actually valuable and important. And one thing that I like to highlight, and we've pressed into this, and we want to continue to press into it, is something you mentioned a couple of times, is about the people. And so when you talk about a place like Palmetto Bake Shop, and we haven't done anything with them in particular, but just as an example, that's a great place. I mean, I may be by there in the next 24, 48 hours, quite
Exactly.
possibly. But and I'm thinking about, Taste of West Indies, and Stefani and her mother are actually coming on in 2 weeks to
Mhm.
be here
Yeah.
to do this. But a lot of people that don't have a background in the restaurant industry, and me and Tamara talked about this when they were here, they don't realize that people are getting up first thing in the morning,
Oh, yeah.
all the prep work that goes on, everything that happens. So it's very easy to formulate an opinion about a place and say, very superficial and say, well, I don't like this, I do
Yeah.
like that. Or I had this experience, so that's
Right.
categorized as this for me, and not have any realization of, more of the depth to it. I was having a conversation with my brother-in-law yesterday. He just got back from Honduras. He's been there for like 2 months. We didn't think he was coming back because he met a young lady down there. So they're from Honduras.
Yeah.
We were talking yesterday, and he made a comment about something locally. I don't even remember exactly what it was, honestly. And this exact statement came up. I said, it's a lot easier to formulate an opinion and just write something off when you don't know somebody. I said, but
Right.
like we're in-laws, and I said, if I opened a restaurant and you may or may not particularly like something that I do, but it's a lot more difficult for you just to make a quick flash statement about what I'm doing because we have a relationship.
Yeah.
And now it's a little bit more personal. You're more apt to appreciate what I'm doing, even if it's not your preference or style, whatever the case may be. But the way that you speak about what I do will be different because of our
Right.
relationship.
Because you have that human connection.
Right. And so
And
we've
I think
got all
that's
these
super
places
important.
popping up. And for one, a lot of them that you just named 3 places. City Center is a little bit different because it's
Yeah.
a hub. But with Buddy's and the Bake Shop, both of those are phenomenal. Both of them.
Right.
And to prove that, we were doing our burger ranking thing, which I stopped doing after things began to shift. But Buddy's was my number one.
Yeah.
And it stayed that
Yeah.
way the entire time.
Wow.
So needless to say, I think they do a good job.
Mm.
But the thing that I really like is, especially in a community like Florence, there's people behind these businesses.
Right.
And we try to highlight that. I think it's just a good thing to do, and it
Yeah.
helps.
And the thing that's frustrating, I think, is now in this sort of, everyone's a critic these days. It's so easy to take someone down without ever connecting with them. And it's like, if you had a bad experience in a restaurant, go talk to someone. You have to.
Well, I think that, to be honest, like a lot of that kind of cynicism about restaurants comes from, the distinction that not everyone can see, but you and I probably see between independent restaurants, privately owned, mom and pop, chef owned restaurants, and the bigger share of restaurants that are, corporate chains.
Yep.
Like we live in a world where, probably 8 out of 10 restaurants are corporate chains.
Let me just say this real quick,
Yeah.
not to cut you off, because this comes up a little bit even in the Facebook group. I see these comments. I will tell you from inside experience, there is a difference.
Yeah.
I've worked at both, and both can be great. Both have a purpose
Sure.
and a value.
Absolutely.
But even in the way day to day that they're ran, there's a very distinct difference in a corporate restaurant and a privately, locally owned restaurant,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And so we certainly are attuned to those distinctions, and we are not prejudiced against either one. They both have their places. But I think that cynicism about dusting off just like quick takes on that might come from a kind of feeling that you were taken advantage of in some of those corporate restaurants.
Yeah, quite possibly.
It's easy to dump on McDonald's if you don't know the story, and that McDonald's might be local franchise and with a really earnest and well-intentioned owner, and you might be able to taste the difference actually in those kinds of situations. But
For sure.
we especially want to know the story behind the independent, locally owned restaurant.
Yeah.
Because that's where the real magic can happen.
And just say one more thing too in our conversation. I think another thing that you find with that is all the nuance of cuisine that we were talking about a moment ago. I think you're probably more likely to stumble across some of those gems in a locally owned restaurant than the chain.
Without question.
Without question.
Yeah.
Without question.
When we go to a new place that we've never traveled to before, we're always, hunting for those.
Yeah.
And that's because it's business. I mean, these big corporations, they're trying to, they need to supply a large audience.
Yeah,
that's what their goal is. It's a bottom line type of situation.
Yeah.
But you might be more likely to find a chef that's really meticulous about what he or she is serving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, like a locally owned place can be a diner. It might not be meticulous food.
Sure.
That's not the goal. But it just is, cooking with intention and, family tradition and soul, and to meet a need in the community. And you can read a lot into that.
And it's been fun because, we sort of do our own sleuthing around, but it's great, when people just tell us, hey man, have you been to the ramen shop in Hero's Hideout? That was one of our first sort of like discoveries where like the second year, it's like, have you approached, there's a guy there, his name is Tony Carter, and he's doing really deep, like making all his own stocks. And we were like, in the back of
that's a hidden gem
in the back of a gaming store. I mean, that doesn't exist in Charleston. Hello. And so that was, finding those gems, but sometimes they are sort of under the radar. We were like, wait, why didn't we know about this before? He'd been doing it for a year. And sometimes people don't really think, well, they make the mistake that a food and wine festival is, since it says wine as well, they think it's like upscale or, snobby or something. And so they're not thinking what we want is like discoveries where locals go.
Yeah.
There's no style of food that to us is not stellar. Anything can be stellar. A smash burger can be stellar. That's what Buddy's tells you.
Yeah.
It's like a French fry can be stellar, a donut, a croissant, like whatever it is. We have no elitism when it comes to food. Like Ballpark Franks, we know what we like in Ballpark Franks, right? Like
I think that may happen. And I hope that, if we can do anything to dissuade any of that notion, and hopefully we'll accomplish that. But I think because of the title, Florence Wine and Food, I don't know. But I mean, I think that the numbers have done well, though. Have y'all seen a good, healthy progression since y'all came in?
Oh,
I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
We're now at more like 3,000 tickets when it was 600. And that Culinary Village, that grand tasting on Saturday afternoon is really the expansion valve because it can grow tent by tent, and as the local restaurateurs, want to be a part of it, we've got room for them,
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're into food, it just food and you're in the PD area, like you have to go to this event. This is kind of like the Super Bowl.
And it's fun. There's, we have at the grand tasting, there's music, there's cooking demonstrations, there's a mixology competition, and it's always good fun. It's a great way to spend a Saturday.
It's busy, but there's elbow room. It's like you're not waiting. If you've ever been to the equivalent experience, the Culinary Village at another festival, inevitably it's like long lines waiting to get poured a tiny sip of grocery store Prosecco. Not at this one.
Yeah.
This one, inevitably the person who made it is like pouring it for you and stuff like that.
And we're fortunate that our presenting sponsor is Mickey Finn's, and they give us a generous budget to and Sam Tinsley, our beverage director, he chooses the wines, and he's not just choosing something you can get on the shelf at, Walmart or Harris Teeter.
But it's spirits, it's beers, it's cider, it's everything.
And in recent years, we're trying to develop our zero proof as well. So, if you don't drink alcohol, we've got something for you too that's going to be a revelation. It's going to be a discovery.
That's what I'm saying. It's a diverse event, and it's It's just fun. It's a good thing to do. You get to eat. I mean, it's hang out and maybe learn something. So can't ask
Well,
for much more than
and
that.
I went to the Pecan Festival last year and was amazed. I mean, that operation and that experience is just incredible. But I was thinking, if you like that, try the model where it's maybe $50 up front, but you never have to pull your wallet out for the
Yeah,
entire thing. And, it's not nearly as competitive. It's not 40,000 people. It's, 800,
it's very
maybe
different. Yeah,
1,000. Yeah.
which Pecan Festival is great too, but it's a different. It's definitely
Yeah.
more
I loved it.
And
a
But
little bit more elbow room.
I really
like
wanted to
you
taste
said that way.
everything though, and you just can't do that.
Right.
yeah. The other thing that we do bring in, I mean, back to circle back, Tim originally asked us to be the culinary headliner, and we do have a culinary headliner every year, and we've sort of developed it. It started out being Natalie Dupree was our first, and she's unfortunately no longer with us, but that was one of her last public appearances. And with our festival, the culinary headliner does one event outside of the final pour, which is our finale event, a plated seated dinner. But the role of the headliner is it's sort of like the final pour is a tribute to that headliner who is always a cookbook author. First year it was Natalie. Second year it was Katie
Usually
Button.
a TV has some
And
kind of
usually a
TV
TV
personality, so you're
presenter.
likely to have seen them before.
So Katie Button was second year that we were involved. Vivian Howard was the third year. Rodney Scott was the fourth year, and just last year was Sean Brock. And
and we're getting ready to announce the headliner for this year.
Headliner for this year. Can't quite.
We're not gonna get that out.
It's going to be major. It's going to be
It's
incredible.
going to be fun. It's going to be major.
But they basically play the role of kind of spirit animal of the festival over the course of those days. And so they have a dedicated show, which is a ticketed event, very
Friday
affordable,
afternoon.
with a bite and a sip, of course, where they just give of themselves, their entire personality. They design the show. It usually takes the form of a demonstration. Rodney Scott just had a whole hog laid out, and with a couple of his friends just showed how the barbecue, impresarios pick a whole hog and how they're thinking about composition of the different textures and flavors and what they do with the drippings and stuff like that. It was really neat. And then they are also present at the grand tasting and usually judging some of the activity that's on the stage, which takes the form of contests and tastings and demonstrations and stuff like that.
But since it's a smaller festival, like you can really get FaceTime with, I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said, "Oh my God, I had a 10-minute conversation with Sean Brock. He's my idol." And you can do that in Florence because it's not such a crush.
The physical space of the festival all takes place within a few blocks there. And so just that natural, walking from one place to another, inevitably you run into friends, people you want to meet, the celebrities, the chefs, everybody.
And last year, so Sean Brock's the culinary headliner. The previous 2 years, culinary headliners, Rodney Scott and Vivian, just showed up because they had such a good time.
They had such a great time in Florence. They wanted to be present.
They just wanted to be present for it. Like
I mean, honestly, word is spreading about this festival throughout the state because it truly hits the spot for people. It doesn't ask a lot of you in terms of money or stress or strain or time or energy. It comes at a great time of year for food. The greens are just coming out, peas, strawberries, everything's just about to pop. And it just, the hospitality of the Florence area, there may be some negativity, as you say, but
oh yeah, don't get me wrong.
In general, people are very friendly, and it reminds people of a gentler time for sure.
Absolutely.
It's a great place.
So I got to ask, with that being said, great opportunity to do that. We're at an hour, so we'll probably could do this for another hour. I could see. But,
oh, no doubt. Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you, we at the end of every show, we ask our guests their favorite Florence County food item when they go out to eat. And so give us one or two apiece of your favorite local items when you go out to eat in Florence County.
I'll give you 3.
That'll be fine.
Hot dog croissant at Palmetto Bake Shop.
Okay.
Hot dog croissant is one of those things that, people, all those thousands of people driving I-95 should get off I-95 and get themselves there to try something like that. Another item, a black diamond watermelon from Ellerby Farm. They're selling them right now at the farm stand.
What's that?
And
What's unique about that?
It's an heirloom watermelon that's got a very dark out exterior and just a beautiful ruby red interior, and it's seedless. But it's an heirloom. It's just packed with flavor.
Wow.
It's like, if you're a connoisseur of watermelons, like that is the one. And then honestly, like full day off, no budget. I would go for one of Shelby Tumbleton's steaks at Victor's.
Very nice.
Like a tomahawk.
Yeah.
All right. This is really hard because there's so much. But I'll do the birthday cake bonbon Chocobella.
Okay.
I'm going to do
the cake bonbon.
Porchlight Petal cocktail at Victor's. I'll do a burger at Lil Jazzy's any day.
Yeah, those are good.
And I'll probably do a steak at Town Hall. Thomas on the grill there.
Yeah.
He's an ace.
Worked with Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great answers. Any steak downtown you can't go wrong with.
No, that's right. It really is a great steakhouse town.
Okay.
And but that's the thing. There's so much. I mean, I think we're headed for Buddy's Burger right now. So.
Can't go wrong with that either. All right. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate y'all's time. Appreciate y'all's contribution to our area.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do, because Florence Foodies is everything, I mean, that's what we're here to.
Well, truth be told,
elevate.
and just listening to this conversation, I mean, you guys would be like, path makers to a lot of the ideas of what I visualize when it comes to the stories and just the appreciation and respect for cuisine, in the culinary world and the people who prepare food. So
Exactly.
Well, it's hard when you live in a place and grow up in it to have a perspective on it, right? It's just the way things are. It's the landscape. But sometimes you need someone like us, or you need to step away yourself to realize how special it is. And I'm telling you, this place is special, and you should cherish it and celebrate it. There is no reason that someone in Seattle, Washington should not pay, cold hard cash to get on an airplane and come here as a destination. Like, think about that. It's not just
It's a destination.
we all should celebrate it amongst ourselves. Like, spread the word. Like, people should get on airplanes and get out of their cars and visit Florence and the PD, because there's so much specialness going on here.
that's right.
They're going to have a great
Y'all
time
heard
here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate y'all definitely, and I guess we'll have to
Same.
wait for the announcement of dates and
yeah.
times and
Let's stay
headlines.
You
tuned.
will be the first to know.
Okay.
Let us promise you that.
All right, and y'all will be able to know because we're going to put all of your social links down in the description. So
Sweet.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yep.
Sammy. Really
Thank y'all.
appreciate all
Yeah.
you do.
I appreciate it, and we appreciate y'all's viewership as always. And God willing, we'll see you on the next one.